Okay, so it looks like I'm just really caught up in the nostalgia right now because after doing the MetroCon tournament battles and then going through my team builds, it seems like a lot of you guys are also interested in just hearing about when Pokemon battling was at its best. But this time I'm going to do another spin on it and trying to like figure out what really made Pokemon battling take such a bad turn. I feel like 5th generation was the big cause of it. I'm not like, oh, 5th generation's bad, just kind of like taking a dump on 5th generation. But there were a lot of things that were unhealthy to the metagame in various ways, and then 6th generation didn't help. Now, I don't think Mega Pokemon had anything to do with this. I felt like it was dropping off in 5th gen, and if anything, Mega Pokemon tried to save it. It seemed like they were trying to address something. There are issues with Mega Pokemon, but I'm going to get there. And the main reason behind me making this video is I saw a lot of other nostalgic comments as well, that it made me feel so good, that in my little nostalgia, oh man, I remember when like this Pokemon used to be good, I remember running this back in the 4th generation. A lot of you guys had stories to tell as well. That's why I want to keep going. I want to try to figure out what went wrong with Pokemon and how we can also make it better. Try to look forward to the future. Try to bring the community back to where it was, because I honestly feel like the 4th generation is when the community was at its best, it's where competitive was at its best, and that's really every decision I've tried to make on this channel. Whenever I make a rant, whenever I make a guide, pretty much anything like that, I'm trying to do it to make the Pokemon community just a little bit better, either through knowledge or addressing the problems. That a lot of people say that I'm the problem in the community. No, I'm just exposing all the problems that were already there. You know, don't shoot the messenger. But here we go. So let's go into some of the shenanigans. And Ferrothorn really mixed things up because it just became such a staple. And then Ferrothorn's reliability also, I feel, made entry hazards a lot better. Now, I don't know if this was just an evolution of the metagame. Like, oh, entry hazards weren't really as much used in the 4th generation. And then 5th generation, like, people started unlocking the secrets to the power of the setup and the Stealth Rocks and stuff. Because it's really weird that Stealth Rock was actually a TM in the 4th generation, then it got discontinued and turned into a tutor move. But in the 4th generation, when it was so widely available, I didn't feel like it was used as much as it was in the 5th generation, and now as spammed as it had been in the 6th and 7th generations. I wonder if that's just Pokemon reliability, that we had more Pokemon that can just kind of come in and bring the reliable setup, which kind of forced people to start running Rapid Spin or start running Defog. And then Defog also became an issue because it was no longer easily available in the 4th generation, and then you needed transfer Pokemon, and then you just didn't have it on demand with a TM, and then Pokemon Bank just kind of made it worse. I also feel that, like, legacy moves, that changes to legacy moves going, like, into the 6th generation with the Pokemon Bank barrier, that kind of upset the balance a little, and I've already done a video on that. But I just feel like Ferrothorn, that Ferrothorn made it as mandatory to have Ice in the 4th generation, well, now it's mandatory to have Fire. That instead of teching Hidden Power Ice, you had Hidden Power Fire and then an Ice Beam Pokemon. Or you had Flamethrower and a Hidden Power Ice Pokemon. You know, dealing with one mandatory 4x weakness to respond to, that was pretty solid. And also, it was just a wider variety of Pokemon. That was Dragonite, it was Salamence, it was Garchomp. You know, Ice had a lot more usage, but with Ferrothorn and Fire, it just became necessary because the only way of killing Ferrothorn is with Fire. You can still deal with Garchomp and Salamence and all these other Pokemon by just hitting them with a really powerful, super effective hit that didn't even have to be Ice. You know, a strong Dragon-type move could do the job as well. But then Ferrothorn, it just became too tanky, and I feel that that's kind of where the issues start coming to play for the 5th generation. It just brought so many stall aspects to the game that it really slowed down the pace of the game, and because of that, you had to run at least one of these stall Pokemon. You had to run a hard counter, and this is where I feel that the free form of bringing whatever you want really got hit, because if you bring whatever you want, then there's going to be a Pokemon that was introduced in the 5th generation that completely stops what you want to do, and you need to now have a threat for that, or at least a common Pokemon was introduced in the 5th generation. Actually, I'm going to move this to more in the beginning of the video, so if you hear a weird cut, that's why, because I feel that another issue, and the reason why Stall got so much stronger, is that nerf. That nerf to, like, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Blizzard, Thunder, all of them losing just a little bit of base power. You know, we lost 10% of base power off those gambling moves, you know? Like, there was so much damage behind Fire Blast because they had less accuracy. Same with Thunder and Blizzard, and those lost damage. Same with Thunderbolt and Flamethrower. We lost even 5 base power, but that means there's, like, slightly better ranges. It just slows down the metagame just slightly that much more. And I think that that also had a big effect that people aren't realizing. And then we have Scald. I honestly feel like just Scald existing is one of the worst things that ever happened in Pokemon, because again, it slows it down. That now you can have a bulky water type Pokemon that, yeah, seems like water with like Vaporeon and some of the other like bulky water type Pokemon. It was meant to kind of slow down your opponent's momentum, get them kind of trapped just with this low vulnerability kind of typing. but overall just Scald coming in, 30% chance to burn the target, which means 30% chance that your opponent loses half their hit points. And that becomes permanent unless they have a way of kind of curing the status, which most Pokemon don't. So what you do is you Scald, you burn their physical attacker, that Pokemon's pretty much out of the game now, which means now they have to switch into a tank, and just became Tank Wars. That there were a lot of more balanced tanks in the 4th generation, 3rd, and using all those other Pokemon, but then like the tank game just got stepped up so much, and we had all this like stalling coming in from the Scald and silliness like that. So that created quite a few issues, and then we look at a Pokemon like Amoonguss. Amoonguss just became the go-to Pokemon as well, because anytime you introduce Spore, you're playing a gamble. Like, you know, Breloom was used a lot back in the 4th generation. Parasect, even though for like the power of Spore wasn't able to be saved, now we have Amoonguss. We have a tank with Spore, and we have a Pokemon that has the Regenerator hidden ability. So it's a tank with Spore that can either heal itself to half or switch out and then gain a third of its hit points as well. And that's just absolutely too unfair. That Amoonguss can come into like anything, Spore almost anything, and then it can either switch out, it can heal up and switch out, it can go for setup, it can go for damage, and it just kind of made it to where, okay, now I really need to bring fire, now I really need to have response for if one of these Pokemon comes into play, and the Amoonguss just made it that much more difficult to get around things. Even all of the forces of nature, they bring some silliness to the table just through power. The Prankster on the Thundurus is pretty scary, same on the Tornadus, and then just the outright damage and speed that can come out of Landorus. That's like, okay, now we have a second Garchomp. Pretty much one Garchomp was doable. But now we have a second Garchomp to deal with, and that's where things started to have problems, because, okay, you can Scarf it, and then it has a powerful Earthquake, it also has Rock Slide for flinching. It just did really annoying things, and it became too safe. There was a lot of safety introduced in the 5th generation. That's where people started refining the metagame and then falling back on safety instead of trying to like explore and develop new strategies. And there weren't really a lot of free-form ideas. That a lot of the Pokemon introduced in the 5th generation and the way the metagame kind of unfolded is that what you had to do is just ran the best, most common set on it, and it became very centralized, which I think just started leading to the problems that started compounding. That as we got into 6th generation opened up a lot more freedom, a lot more things that you could kind of accomplish inside the game, but people were just so set on the 5th generation that they didn't really explore as much. So then just kind of the 6th generation expanded and then kind of folded back in on itself, and then it just kind of stayed that way as we keep on going. Now we are seeing a bit more freedom in the 7th generation, and for the most part this video is about like single battles, because that's kind of like where you can judge the meta stability. That if singles kind of condense into nothing, well then most of what people are going to be playing is dead. And even in doubles, like doubles, it felt a little better in the 5th generation. Unfortunately, there was just a lot of like rain, and then rain and all the weather effects were nerfed in the 6th generation. Then people just ran the same Mega Pokemon next to Landorus, and then now in the 7th generation, I think the 7th generation still has promise. That this is just a Alola Dex. Once we get outside of Alola Dex, maybe that will like unkill the game. I feel that Pokemon feels it's not in a good state. Like, it's weird. Pokemon Sun and Moon sold more copies than anything, like largest 3DS game, blew everything out of the water, exploded Pokemon, and it feels like the amount of people currently interested in Pokemon is the same like a year after Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You know, like once Omega and Ruby Alpha Sapphire started dipping off, that's where Pokemon Sun and Moon is right now. And like that's why I have to say, I say that Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire died fast, and it feels like Pokemon Sun and Moon is just dying hard. That for all of the new people that came into the game, very few of them stuck, or all the people that were coming in from like X and Y Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they left with Pokemon Sun and Moon, and it just kind of balanced out, and it feels like there's not as many people playing. I wonder if that's just because of all the other issues I'm going to address. You know, the metagame has been getting stagnant. I feel that Smogon and the toxicity that Smogon's brought to the community, that damage is almost irreversible at this point. You can just see that with like all the hate on my YouTube channel, all the hate on anyone that tries to say, hey, let's make the community better. People go, no, we like our community the way it is, and then they just like kind of condense into that toxicity, even though all it is just bullying people, not allowing freedom, not allowing creativity, and just kind of like sitting on the problems in Pokemon, and then just kind of being, just saying like, well, we have these problems under control for us, and it's all about going against the spirit of the game. That I feel the spirit of the game has been just lost. And we can even say, like, the Pokemon Company also has a big hand in, like, the decline of Pokemon, I feel. That we just watch them. They refuse to punish hackers. They refuse to try to, like, reinforce and uphold the spirit of Pokemon. And now, with, like, their metagame decisions, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, having Legendaries for a format, not the worst thing, but it confused a lot of players. You know, I thought legendaries were banned. I'm going back to Smogon where they banned their legendaries. I'm not going to play in the 7th generation because they don't ban legendaries. Oh wait, legendaries are banned. What's going on here? And then the Alola decks, you can't really do much about the format when it's pre-Pokemon Bank and those are the only Pokemon you have access to. But it turned out that there were only like 8 good Pokemon. And people are just running those 8 good Pokemon. So as we get into more diversity with like a larger cast, there's more combos. And we see this in Fan Fries. Like, oh, that could be VGC legal, except for this. I feel that Mega Pokemon were a necessity. That it kind of responded to the power creep in the 5th generation, and it turned it around and went, oh, yeah, we need to kind of bring some of these older Pokemon back and make them a little stronger, and then kind of keep up with this power creep going on. Z-moves, Ultra Beasts, and Tapus, they just kind of escalated the power creep as well, but we don't have the Mega Pokemon anymore. So the dynamic was really lost just to kind of preserve what was in the 7th generation. You know, downplaying Megas, upplaying Ultra Beasts, Tapus, the new Legendaries, and everything like that, and then going into Z-moves. But that just made for a not good metagame. So I think there's still hope for the 7th generation. As we get into the next season, I think there's still promise there. But now back to all the other things. Because when you look at the 4th generation competitively, where is it? Yeah, these Pokemon right here. The Pokemon that got evolutions from previous generations, it just worked well. That a lot of them felt useful, a lot of them felt balanced, and it didn't feel like there was anything that would completely devastate you. It didn't seem like there was any Pokemon that was a must-have on the team, and there was something for everyone. That, you know, you could at least pick one Pokemon from each typing that worked, that wasn't mandatory, and could kind of keep your team nice and balanced. With this, you have to give up balance just to make your team more stally. You have to give up balance to make your team more anti-stall, and then you kind of have to conform to the metagame. And I think that's just a consequence of what came out of the 5th and what ended up happening to the 6th generations as well. And it was just so well done with these evolutions. But instead of introducing, you know, expansions and new evolutions, for the 5th generation, they just threw in a bunch of Pokemon. You know, over 150 Pokemon introduced on the 5th generation. That's insane. 6th generation gave us Megas. Alolan forms didn't really expand. Like, Alolan forms aren't as useful by comparison as the Pokemon the 4th generation were when they were released. Like, when these Pokemon were released, those were awesome stats. Those were awesome Pokemon. You get to use these guys, and they all felt impactful. I would say, like, the least impactful back then, Probopass and Magmortar, and even then they were usable. Like, you can pull out these Pokemon, it's like, yow, these things are going to hurt and they're going to do damage, but then we get into the other generations and it's just not that fantastic. Other issues, Knockoff. Knockoff getting a buff in the 6th generation, it got overtuned. Way overtuned. That it does not need to be a KO potential move that gets bonus damage. You know, it needs to be locked at 65, that way Technician Pokemon can't abuse it, and then just no 50% more bonus damage. Removing an item means that you can remove up to 50% of your opponent's damage boosting, because, like, you get rid of the choice item, and then that's just insane right there. Same with the Life Orb. Same with whatever strategy they're doing, that just devastates sweeping Pokemon, and it reinforces stall anymore. Bring in a bulky Pokemon with Knockoff, knock off all the sweeper items, go into Scald, burn all the physical attackers, game's done right there, GG. And then the game just kind of boils down to whoever brought more tanky Pokemon that deal with the other stall Pokemon on the team. So that's kind of what we have. And then with doubles, I feel doubles Intimidate needs a nerf. That all it is right now is that this is what we saw. Doubles starts out as something that has some diversity, a little bit of physical Pokemon get in the mix, Garchomp gets in the mix, and then it just boils down to Intimidate wars. That all you do is you just switch every turn with a bulky-ish Pokemon, and then you run the Intimidate, and that's kind of it. I feel Intimidate needs a nerf to where it only has its effect while that Pokemon is on the field. That it doesn't -1, it just like has a permanent, you know, minus 25% for each Intimidate Pokemon on the field to the opponent. Something like that. Instead of just like immediate -2 on turn start or after one switch, if you run 2 Intimidate Pokemon, you just cycle through them and then shenanigans ensue. I think that really hurts the game, and even like in single battles, that if you're down to like your last physical sweeper, and they have 1 Intimidate Pokemon left, you just lose the battle, because they switch out, switch back into Intimidate, switch out, switch back into Intimidate, God forbid that other Pokemon's a Regenerator, so they have like forever switches, and now your last Pokemon that you can't switch out, or if you get trapped in some way, and you're just stuck on that Intimidate, yeah, you can't switch it out, so now you're at -2, 3 on the attack, and they eventually just whittle you down. So Intimidate, I feel it's kind of lost a lot of control, that it's gone off the rails and needs something to where it can't stack like it does. That just slows, like, I think a lot of the issues are just the game is getting slowed down and the threats are either way too overtuned offensively or they're just way too defensive, and they don't really counter each other. It's like, okay, I bring in Landorus. That's actually not a reliable way of taking out Ferrothorn. So now, you know, Landorus and Ferrothorn on the same team is going to be pretty devastating. Like, you just talk about these same Pokemon that are just always being used all the time, and it doesn't feel like they're these older Pokemon that should be getting more representation. Now, as for the Mega Pokemon, my only issues with the Mega Pokemon is that there were just a few too good Mega Pokemon. Like, Kangaskhan got a nerf, Mawile ended up with a slight nerf because of the Sucker Punch changes. Like, 7th generation, those changes need to happen in the 6th generation more, I feel, and then there would have been better balance, not making some of the Megas as powerful. Like, I don't think that Kangaskhan is ban-worthy. I don't think that Lucario and Gengar and Mawile and all these other Pokemon and Salamence are ban-worthy, but they are a little too overtuned. I'm not like, oh, they're overpowered. You know, I'm not like, oh, they need to be stopped because they're too strong. I'm just saying they're so strong that it makes it to where if I'm using my 1 Mega Evolution, I'm going to pick from the strongest Pokemon instead of from the weakest Pokemon. That a Mega Pokemon should not be weaker than some normal Pokemon, and that's what we ended up seeing. That's like, okay, if I Mega Evolve this Pokemon, that's just a waste of my Mega, and then X Pokemon is just better than that anyway. It outclasses it even for doing the same job. So, just some of the Mega Pokemon came in, weren't impressive, and then there were just a few Megas that were too good. So I don't think Megas were bad. Like, overall, you see a lot of diversity in Megas and strategies that can help break these stall Pokemon, that can help offset this power differential, but it was, like, slightly not enough. And again, like, the community mentality was already just stuck that way. And then we get to cheating. Now, I've said so much on cheating, but it goes without saying that cheating is killing Pokemon or has killed Pokemon, depending on what you think what the state Pokemon is in right now. Because, yeah, like, in the 4th generation, it was like power saves, action replay, or whatever, and people didn't really stand for that. And then as cheating, like RNG, I think RNG was the gateway, something else from 5th generation. RNG method kind of created gray area. Hackers, cheaters, they hid inside of that gray area. Even though it's forbidden by the Pokemon Company, they still said, well, it's still doable in game. You know, they had their full shiny teams, and then as hacking tools like PK Hex, Pokegen did come out in the 5th generation, but as these got more refined in the 6th generation, people just gave up. Like, well, everyone's cheating, I might as well cheat. Just because the next person say, everyone's cheating, I might as well cheat. Hey, he's cheating, I'm going to cheat. And now we have a snowballing of a majority of the community not being legitimate players, and that is bad for any competitive scene. Imagine, you know, everyone using scripts, or like, 60% of League of Legends using scripts, 70% of Overwatch having aimbots. We're on that level of cheating right now to where some people are doing it, it's discouraging legitimate players from wanting to play, and then cheaters are getting self-righteous. Like, that's what we're in right now. The cheaters, the hackers, they're actually saying that they are in the right, that they feel that they can look down on the players for playing legitimately, like by saying, I cheated, I'm smarter than you for not wasting my time. That is most of the hacking community, which is most of the Pokemon community right now, and that is a terrifying thing that is destroying the spirit of Pokemon, and it just reinforces that negativity. I'm better than you because I cheat. We're not even talking about gameplay anymore. It's not, oh, I outplayed you, it's just, I win, you suck, oh, by the way, you're a legitimate player, ha ha ha, get wrecked, you know? Like, the toxicity is just snowballing, and that comes from Smogon as well. That Pokemon Showdown, with that blowing up, people got used to simulator mentality. That they were just sitting on simulators going, well, I don't have to play the game anymore. I'll just hack into my Pokemon, and it's like I'm playing Pokemon Showdown on my DS in the real game. Like, the simulator ended up turning the game into a simulation as well, and then people just lost respect for the game. The community just gets more and more toxic. So, it's really unfortunate that it kind of, like, blew up so much, and that, you know, Smogon was a driving force, all of these hackers were a driving force. It just got, like, negativity on top of negativity, and then the Pokemon Company didn't help. So, it's like, everything that could have gone wrong, everything that can destroy the integrity of competitive Pokemon, ended up going down. You know, Pokemon Company failing, the balance being an absolute mess, and then just the communities getting more and more toxic. I tried to help it. I don't know if I've slowed it down. And I feel like in a weird way, you know, I sped it up, that people backlash so much, like, oh, you're calling me a scumbag for cheating. It's like, well, yes, cheaters are scumbags. And then, like, the backlash gains so much momentum that, you know, when you call out a majority of something, it doesn't matter if it's in the right or the wrong, it's going to have those consequences. So that just caused more people to be like, well, I'm going to cheat harder now. I'm going to cheat more obvious just to spite legitimate players. So we have most of the community cheating to spite the legitimate players, in response to me trying to make the community better by taking away toxicity. It's just, that's Pokemon, and it's all amazing that this came from a kid's game. And I do feel that hidden abilities, now I think this would have actually been better to put in earlier in the video, Hidden abilities also disrupted the metagame a lot, because there was, like, I felt there was balance. You know, you knew what the Pokemon was going to run, the ability was balanced, and then some of these hidden abilities on Pokemon are absolutely ridiculous. Yes, they are good buffs, but you already give, like, really strong Pokemon an even stronger hidden ability, and then that kind of ruins the balance. That it wasn't a catch-up mechanic, it was just further power creep. And then there's some Pokemon that got useless hidden abilities, and then they just stayed bad. So it was a lot of disproportional stuff. I feel that the 7th generation took a really good turn for balance. You know, we have these weather-inducing abilities on a lot of Pokemon that weren't getting play that are actually now getting play. Like, Gitlith and Torkoal are pretty strong right now, and that's amazing to see. Mantine is a beast special defense tank. So a lot of the buffs and nerfs that you saw go through, they were very, very effective. Actually, I'm going to move this to more in the beginning of the video, so if you hear a weird cut, that's why. Because I feel that another issue, and the reason why Stall got so much stronger, is that nerf. That nerf to, like, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Blizzard, Thunder, all of them losing just a little bit of base power. You know, we lost 10% of base power off those gambling moves, you know? Like, there was so much damage behind Fire Blast because they had less accuracy. Same with Thunder and Blizzard, and those lost damage. Same with Thunderbolt and Flamethrower. We lost even 5 base power, but that means there's, like, slightly better ranges. It just slows down the metagame just slightly that much more. And I think that that also had a big effect that people aren't realizing. That just, like, really hurt the metagame. And I think that's it. Just a lot of stall things, a lot of, like, imbalance. It came back a bit in the 7th generation, but then, like, the Pokemon Company just refusing to support, refusing to punish hacking in any way. Even though they did ban, like, 13,000 accounts, you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg, which is scary. So because of that, yeah, it's like, okay, we're making progress, but it's like, it was stuff that needed to happen, and then other things needed to never happen, and then, you know, the community toxicity is just out of control. I think that's a good idea. So just kind of like pointing out some of the issues I think have been going on in Pokemon and why it just isn't as good as when 4th generation. Now, I'm not saying 4th gen, best gen, but I'm saying like everything about Pokemon. The entirety of the Pokemon community, the entirety of Pokemon just felt better in the 4th generation. And I think that's because there was a lot of things that just were right about it that slowly went wrong. So there we go, guys. Hope you all enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.